This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Britain's isolation grows as more and more countries ban travel from the United Kingdom over a new strain of the coronavirus. South Africa's second wave of COVID-19 disrupts festive season plans for many. And Nigeria jihadists kill 5 soldiers and kidnap 35 civilians in separate attacks. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, China formulates an action plan for peaking carbon dioxide emissions before 2030. And in sports, Zimbabwe sports look to rebound from coronavirus disruption. More countries around the world are banning flights and travelers from the United Kingdom. It's to stop a more infectious new strain of the coronavirus. British officials worry is now out of control. The European Union is expected to consider a coordinated response to contain the situation. Let's get more now from CGTN's Tony Waterman joining us live from Brussels. Tony, what do we expect from the EU Council meeting on this new variant of COVID-19?
Well, the EU leaders should be gathering around their computer screens as we speak, because this meeting is meant to be kicking off right now. They're looking to try and form a coordinated approach, not only to these travel bans from the UK, but also on how to deal with this very fast spreading new variant of the virus. Over the weekend, we had more than 10 European countries announce that they were putting these travel bans in place to varying degrees, but in place nonetheless, from Germany, the Netherlands, Austria. Here in Belgium, for example, since midnight, all trains and planes from the UK have been halted for a 24-hour period as the government here tries to wrap its head around this new strain of the virus. The most consequential of these bans, though, is from France, which has put a ban in place for all incoming travel from the UK for 48 hours. And this includes lorry drivers. The EU is the UK's largest trading partner. Most of that trade takes place via trucks, and now that has been halted for 48 hours. And we had already seen these massive buildups for lorries for miles and miles at the Dover port in Kent, and then also at Calais in France, where a lot of the trade that happens between the EU and the UK takes place. So this is essentially cutting off the trading of goods for 48 hours. So these leaders are trying to come up with a coordinated approach. One option that could be on the table is some sort of rapid testing of these drivers before they come into the ports, before they cross over to the other side, so to speak. But the German newspaper Bild saying that we could see these bans in place until January 6th. The countries in Europe, some of them are still very much fighting a second wave, and the ones that have managed to bring it under control at this point do not want to see a fast-spreading variant taking hold in their countries.
And Tony, how is the UK reacting to the series of travel bans from the EU countries because of this new strain of the virus?
Well, the pound this morning absolutely plunged. We've seen a massive sell-off in the markets, not only in the UK, but also in Europe. A lot of the airline stocks damaged. British Airways, for example, was trading down 19% earlier this morning. But the UK Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has called an emergency meeting of his own with his government officials to try to figure out a way to make sure that goods continue to flow across the border. We're talking about stuff like produce, meats, fish, going back and forth. We're not just talking about Christmas presents here. We're talking about essential goods. And one of those essential goods is actually a coronavirus vaccine itself. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is being produced here in Belgium. And most of those vaccines that are going out to the UK are being shipped via trucks. So they want to make sure that those goods can continue to flow going forward. But the transport minister in the UK really trying to downplay this and pointing to the fact that at least the French officials saying they want to get these goods to begin flowing again as soon as possible.
And parts of the UK, Tony, have also gone under stringent measures because of rising infections, and all of these happening while COVID-19 vaccinations are underway in the UK. What are authorities saying about the outlook for the next few weeks? Is there hope for some relief?
Well, there could be some relief coming today because the European Medicines Agency is going to be meeting and they are expected to sign off on the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. This comes more than a week early from the meeting that they originally had scheduled after they came under immense pressure from governments from France to Germany to get rolling on approving this vaccine. If that is approved by the EMA from EMA, then they move that along to the Commission, which will rubber stamp it. And they've already announced last week that they expect the first vaccines to be rolled out on December 26th. 27th and 28th. These would go out to all of the member states. They're being divvied up depending on population size. And the goal here is that all of these countries will have access to the vaccine on the very same day, but it will be up to each individual country to decide what their vaccine strategy is going to look like. Some are more prepared than others. So we could see some countries vaccinating on the 26th, but a place like the Netherlands, for example, is saying that it may not be able to start its program until January because it's just not ready yet. So there is some relief coming in the pipeline, and according to medical experts at this point, there's no reason to believe that this new fast-spreading variant it would not be sensitive to a vaccine when and if it becomes available. The real concern here, though, is hospital systems once again coming under pressure rather, after the Christmas season, because now we have potentially a fast-spreading new variant taking a foothold in Europe.
It doesn't sound like it will be a Merry Christmas. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. Tony Waterman live for us there in Brussels. Now, vaccinations in the European Union could begin within days. Regulators are expected to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine as early as Monday. Nicole Johnston has more.
This was the moment the world had been waiting for.
Hi. Thank you.
The first person to be vaccinated with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine after it was approved by the UK. The European Union is also preparing to approve its first vaccine, and it's ordered a mix of them.
There are normally bumps along the road, and there are bottlenecks along the road, and we can't afford too many of them if we want to reach these targets. But I think it's feasible, but it does require an unprecedented collaboration, for example, among the international regulators.
The EU has ordered 225 million doses of vaccine from the German company CureVac, 300 million from the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, 200 million from Johnson & Johnson. The Sanofi GSK vaccine won't be ready until the end of 2021, but 300 million doses have been ordered. For Pfizer-BioNTech, it's 300 million doses, and for the Moderna vaccine, 80 million. With a number of vaccines showing promising results in trials, there is optimism that next year will be better, despite Europe now being in the grip of a second wave of the pandemic.
Biggest volume vaccines ever produced, if you exclude flu shots, is 450 million doses. Now, in COVID-19, we talk about 12 to 15 billion doses because we most likely will need 2 doses per person. And when you look at the global need, therefore, it is daunting. It's doubling or even tripling global vaccine manufacture capacity. But I believe it's doable.
If all goes to plan, Germany hopes to start vaccinating in early January in indoor arenas and disused airports. It's already cut its own deal with Pfizer for 40 million doses and has set up 400 vaccination centres. And Hungary has imported Russia's Sputnik vaccine that hasn't been vetoed by the European Medicines Agency.
The other concern is even convincing people to have the vaccine. A recent study found that 1 in 3 people in France believe that vaccines are unsafe. And in Hungary and Poland, 40% of people say that they would not take a vaccine if it was offered to them. But the situation is better here in the UK, where 70% of people say that they will take a vaccine if it's approved by regulators.
Pressure is growing on the EU to follow the UK and approve a vaccine. It shortened its timeline to do it, but with 27 members, the process is bureaucratic. Still, approval is expected to come any day now. Nicole Johnston, CGTN, London.
South Africa has also identified a new variant of the coronavirus that is driving a second wave of infections. South African researchers identified the new virus variant after sequencing hundreds of samples and noticing that it had been dominant in those collected over the past 2 months. CGTN's Olisa Njamila has more details.
The Health Ministry announced that a genomics team sequenced hundreds of samples from across the country since the beginning of the pandemic in March. They then noticed that a particular variant has increasingly dominated the findings of the samples collected. The evidence collated strongly suggested that the current second wave being experienced here in South Africa is being driven by that variant.
This new addition to the family is quite aggressive and quite virulent, and so far it counts for 90% of cases that we have seen. And to make it easier for patients to understand, it moves and spreads quite fast. That's why the curve is looking different from the first virus.
Dr. Kutsia says it was expected that the new variant would appear. What was unexpected was how rapidly the variant would become dominant in South Africa. Clinicians have also noted that with this new variant, younger patients with no underlying conditions have been presenting with critical illness.
I normally call it the black sheep because we do not know what this new variant is going to do. What we do know is that it can change itself or mutate, and it's got 3 mutations. The first one, predominantly, in the first wave, we predominantly saw it was elderly people and people with high blood sugar and cholesterol. Now this black sheep that now comes into play here, or the new variant that comes into play, unfortunately also go for young people. And what we have seen, especially in the ICUs, the people who admitted is not only anymore your elderly patients with non-communicable diseases, but it is young people.
The health fraternity is now extremely concerned.
We are very, very worried. Again, because what we have seen is that the curve goes straight up. It doesn't slowly goes up, it goes straight up. It's a problem. It means the infection is much more virulent. Again, we have, during this time of the year, there's a lack of doctors. Everyone, or most of them, are on leave. So there's skeleton staff.
Government has now issued a stern warning against organizing and attending festivals, sporting events, and mass gatherings. These events have been identified as super spreaders of the virus. The importance for people to adhere to the non-pharmaceutical interventions of wearing masks, washing hands, and social distancing has been further emphasized. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's go to Nigeria, where 5 soldiers have been killed after jihadists ambushed a military convoy. According to military sources, their convoy was hit outside of Mafa in the northeastern part of Borno State on Saturday. The militants also attacked a transport convoy in the same region on Friday, abducting at least 30 people and killing 1 woman. A splinter group from Nigeria's Boko Haram sect called the Islamic State West Africa Province has been blamed for both incidents. Staying in Nigeria, and some of the boys freed after being kidnapped in the northwest have been speaking out about the ordeal in the hands of their abductors. CGTN's Joy Kiruki with the details.
16-year-old Anas Shuaibu is happy to be back home. He is among the 344 students kidnapped from a school in northwest Nigeria. He recounts the events of that fateful day when they woke to the sound of gunshots in the all-boarding school.
We were seated until daylight faded. Then they started shooting guns into the air. One of them came and stood in front of us and said, "Let's move." We reached a place after a certain time and they said we should stop there. They said even if we tried to escape or they allowed us to run, we would go nowhere. Rather, we would die in the forest.
The boys were held for 6 days before security services rescued them from Rungu Forest on Thursday. The boys received little food. They sometimes resorted to eating leaves and drinking from pools of water in the forest. The parents have since become fearful.
Nobody will send back his son in that school without proper security. I don't expect if there is anybody, unless when the government do something, then we leave everything to God again. That we have been leaving it for God, to God.
14-year-old Mohamed Bello cannot hide his joy. He too was among the boys rescued.
I am very happy and excited to meet my friends and everyone at home, and now that I have returned home, I will continue playing and doing what I like. I am very happy and I thank God.
While Boko Haram claimed responsibility, many details surrounding the kidnapping remain unclear. The rising insecurity in Nigeria has evoked memories of the 2014 kidnapping of over 270 schoolgirls in Chibok. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
It's 1:15 the hour. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up. Nigerian farmers worried about severe food scarcity as food reserves continue to decline. And Libyans who escaped punishment by anti-Gaddafi militias slowly trickling back home.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Some South African residents are concerned about the high COVID-19 infection rate in the country. Many people are now skeptical about overseas travel during the festive season and are opting to stay with family. Here's CGTN's Travis Andrews with more.
With over 912,000 COVID-19 infections, South Africa has kicked off the festive season in the midst of a second wave, which is being driven by a new variant. As a result, many people are avoiding crowded gatherings and international travel, including the Mulatto brothers, who are remaining in the mother city for their annual break. For them, the global pandemic and overseas travel poses too much risk.
I chose to stay in the country due to the uncertainties of COVID. I can recall well before few weeks before coronavirus strike, of which in some other parts of the world it started making some kind of a peak, and there were some other trips that were supposed to be considered.
By staying within the safety of a family circle and avoiding unnecessary social gatherings, they are able to stay safe and have an enjoyable coastal holiday in Cape Town. With a COVID-19 infection rate that is now topping over 10,000 new infections a day, many other South Africans are also doing the same until things cool down.
One will just observe in the context of development, and that will basically indicate whether is it safe to travel or not. At the current moment, I don't think I will do that up until one is basically is quite sure of the current circumstances.
And with little to no tourists around, many of Cape Town's famed hotspots such as Signal Hill and Lion's Head still offer them great uncongested space to unwind. With white sandy beaches and a majestic mountain range, it's easy to see why so many people have chosen the mother city over other top international destinations that still remain open. The beaches are where most are ending up, even though authorities continue to voice concern about the potential for super spreader events, especially in congested spots.
Coronavirus is a current thing, and people are filled with fear with regards to it, and supposedly so people are not going out, or I supposedly I'm not going out because of such illnesses that have occurred, particularly from hospitals, from even people that we know. Some of them are no more.
But now COVID-19 has already touched many South Africans on a personal level, including the mulattoes. And while this may be an unprecedented disruption to many people's holiday plans, there is a belief that the tide will begin turning and the country will once again end on a path to normality. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Nigeria may be heading towards a severe food scarcity as food reserves continue to decline. A long-running spate of conflict between farmers and herders and an insurgency in the country's northeast have snowballed into full-blown insecurity. The Farmers Association say these, alongside issues of climate change and the disruptions caused by the coronavirus pandemic, have destabilized the food production chain across the nation. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
Emmanuel Wosu runs this fish farm in the outskirts of Nigeria's capital, Abuja. In the past, he and some of his workers would spend the night on the farm tending to the fish. That determined the output of their harvests. But now Wosu and his team work hurriedly to leave the farm before dark, as it has become more unsafe. Farmers around here have suffered series of attacks. This is affecting their productivity.
Since the insecurity in the country, all the storage systems has been demolished. That is the danger. This place those days, by this time, we have every pond stocked. And when you want to sell, you are sure you want to sell about 20 to 30 tons. But this day, walk around, you can only see about 2 or 3 tons, which because we are not sure of the security. So we take less risk so that to enable us to avert much of the loss. And that is why it is dangerous for the nation, and that is why it is dangerous for even the populace, and that's why the increasing hunger will continue.
Farmers Association has reported a worrying decline in food reserves. The country's food stock is less than 30,000 metric tons, grossly insufficient for the country's 200 million strong population. This is following a consistent surge in farmers' insecurity. The north, which is a seedling nestle for Nigeria, has become a hotspot for bandit attacks, insurgency, and clashes between farmer and herders. A dangerous trend for a nation making diversification efforts towards agriculture.
No need to look for employment. The empty lands is enough to give us what to eat. If people are being harnessed together, the clusters come together, there is acres of 100 acres of land that people can go and farm, government supporting them. There's acres area that people can go and fish, government supporting them. But when they are not sure of sleeping there, farmers sleep in the farm. That's what you call for. But when you can't sleep there, why are you there? There's many of them are killed.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, 9.8 million Nigerians are already facing severe food crisis. It projects the numbers could go up to 13.8 million without urgent intervention. This is as Nigerians grapple with severe economic hardship and unemployment. The United Nations warned that continued violence combined with climate change and COVID-19 disruptions will hamper food production. With the already depleted food reserve, many fear that food scarcity could worsen across Nigeria. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Let's cross over to Libya now, where residents of Tawarga town, some 200 kilometers east of the capital Tripoli, are slowly returning home after almost a decade of exile. Years ago, militia forces rampaged through the town, torching homes and destroying buildings that belonged to those they believed were supporters of former President Muammar Gaddafi. CGTN's Beryl Oro tells us more.
About 40,000 people in the entire town of Tawarga were forced to leave their homes after Libya's Arab Spring leader Muammar Gaddafi was toppled. Militia forces were keen to defeat Gaddafi and saw the town as an enemy. Many of its enemies were believed to be his supporters. But a 2018 reconciliation deal backed by the United Nations recognized Government of National Accord was signed between the former bitter enemies. This saw people slowly begin to go back to the town.
We are now on the land of Tawarga, and this has been our desired goal for the last 7 years. The fact that we are able to be in Tawarga like this is in itself a goal that has been achieved.
But starting life all over again was not easy, as many of them have been living in makeshift camps and had to depend on the United Nations. With the support of family and friends, some of the residents have managed to start up businesses that have also benefited the community at large.
The beginning was hard, but thank God my relatives convinced me to get into hairdressing and open a barber shop because the community needed it.
Despite the reconciliation deal and promises by the Tripoli-based GNA stating that residents will receive compensation, many are still hesitant to return home. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
To Kenya now, where Chepkit Falls in Kenya's Nandi County has been a tourist attraction for decades. But the deaths of many there has led to questions about its safety for public use. Residents of nearby settlements hope that it will be closed permanently or adequate safety measures will be put in place to prevent future disasters. CGTN's Nick Mudimba has that report.
Chepkit Falls in Kenya's Nandi County derives its name from the Kalenjin word Chepkit, which means watch from a distance. It looks attractive even from far. Indeed, this is a marvel of Mother Nature, carved out of the magnificent walls of the Great Rift Valley. It's truly a sight to behold and a magnet for tourists from within Kenya and beyond. But there are concerns that it has also become a death trap.
Chepkit inajulikana mpaka ulimwengu yote.
This fall is known the world all over, but as you can see, there's no one here. Just a month ago, there was an accident here. A young girl came to visit, and as she was taking pictures, she slid and fell to her death. The friend tried to rescue her, but it was risky.
Bird lovers and even lovebirds have been swept away here. One has to exercise a lot of caution when at Chepkit Falls, as many have lost their footing in the past, turning picnics into panic, with several deaths reported.
The authorities' response is always prompt when they hear of an incident here. But even during these COVID-19 times, we see people taking a lot of risk. I don't know why.
The tragic incidents led to protests by residents who now want the authorities to either put in place proper safety measures or bar people from Chepkit Falls altogether.
We are requesting for tour guides and divers and security for emergency so that in case of anything, lives can be saved here. Once students are admitted, they should be briefed accordingly and should put prayers ahead. This place has killed so many students since 1960s.
Chepkit Falls is also an important source of fresh water for locals. They pipe the water to their homes for consumption.
Now, the fall behind me is part of a very, very devastating situation in this village. But again, good for the eyes and very dangerous for the soul. The villagers are hoping that authorities will step up and safeguard this place to be a haven for only tourism rather than the negative publicity. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Uasin Gishu County, Kenya.
Now, a coalition of Tanzanian non-governmental organizations fighting against gender-based violence has launched an app that helps victims report cases of abuse. Data on gender-based violence from the country's 2015 to 2016 demographic and health survey shows that 44% of women between the ages of 15 and 49 have experienced either physical or sexual violence. CGTN's Isaac Lukando has more.
Mariam Mareba suffered physical and verbal abuse in her marriage. The 25-year-old lives with scars after her husband of many years poured hot water on her. Traumatized by her ordeal, she was fearful to report.
I was ignorant, and most of the time I pitied my children. I thought maybe we would change, but I was only hurting myself.
A new app called GBV Tarifa, or Information, is now making it easier for women like Mariam to report abuse to authorities. 4 out of 10 women in Tanzania reportedly experience gender violence, with many incidents going unreported. Those behind the app say they want to make justice more accessible.
We have connected the whole chain of justice, meaning the police, hospitals, the courts, all through to when one receives justice. We have social workers in hospitals whose work is to receive these people who have experienced gender-based violence. They know how to treat them differently from other patients, so this app gives them an opportunity to get help quickly.
Although reporting is a challenge, government statistics point to gender desks at police stations as having a positive impact. The number of reported gender-based violence crimes in Tanzania rose from 23,000 cases in 2015 to around 31,000 in 2016, an increase of 39%.
Tanzania's 2017-2022 National Plan of Action to End Violence Against Women and Children
aims to increase the percentage of victims who report within 72 hours from 30% to 65%. The app's developers hope the application will increase conviction rates and the number of gender-based violence cases reported in the country. Mariam's father says staying silent about his daughter's abuse has proven costly. However, he says ongoing reforms in the police force are encouraging victims to come forward.
If you go to the relevant authorities and state your case, the follow-up is not as it used to be, where you'd be asked to give a bribe. I believe that the authorities, like the police, are working well, and I believe they will help us.
The app's developers say the app may not be enough to end abuse. They believe changing harmful cultural practices is key in giving a voice to women like Mariam and helping them take steps towards a safer world. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Coming up in business news, China formulates an action plan for peaking carbon dioxide emissions before 2030. And rare rains bring relief to Senegal's drought-weary ranches.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
China has released a report further outlining its commitments to fight climate change. The white paper reveals reforms to the energy market and industry with a focus on moving more towards clean energy sources ahead of the country's goal of going carbon neutral by 2060.
We have actively participated in the global energy governance and joined hands with countries around the world to deal with climate change. We called on the international community to make joint efforts to work towards green and low-carbon development and support multilateral cooperation in energy. We also called on the rest of the international community to keep the international energy investment and trade smooth and work for more energy accessibility for less developed areas in a bid to advance the sustainable development of global energy and the global energy security. We hope the release of this white paper will help you gain a better understanding of China's efforts in the transformation towards green and low carbon development, as well as China's contribution to the global endeavor against climate change.
The white paper will be published in various languages. Earlier this month, China announced it aims to reduce its carbon intensity by 65% in the next 10 years and to triple wind and solar capacity to 1 billion kilowatts. China's promise to cut its carbon emissions is a goal that was highlighted in a statement released after the nation's annual Central Economic Work Conference on Friday. It's a significant goal in the country's plan for green development as China aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060.
China has formulated an action plan for peaking carbon dioxide emissions before 2030. It's also one of the major topics outlined in the statement from China's Central Economic Work Conference. The meeting highlights the adjustment and optimization of the country's industrial and energy structure to ensure that coal consumption reaches its peak as soon as possible and to boost the development of new energies. China previously announced plans for cutting its carbon emissions at a virtual summit earlier this year to mark 5 years since the signing of the Paris Climate Accord. In addition to cutting carbon emissions, President Xi Jinping has promised China will reach carbon neutrality by 2060. He also said China will lower its carbon dioxide emissions per unit of GDP by over 65% from the 2005 level. And he said China will increase the share of non-fossil fuels in primary energy consumption to around 25%. Other plans for green development include increasing the forest stock volume by 6 billion cubic metres from the 2005 level, as well as increasing the installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 1.2 billion kilowatts. China's energy targets are part of its 14th five-year plan, which was released in November and outlines the nation's economic and social development plans for the next 5 years. Being carbon neutral will greatly change China's energy structure and will lead to greater demands for scientific research and higher technical standards. A big challenge for the country is to find a balance between the need for continuous economic growth, which means more energy consumption, and creating a pathway that ensures growth in energy consumption can align with its low-carbon future. Energy transition is also on the agenda for the future. The National Energy Administration has laid out energy efficiency and energy mix targets for the next 5 years, emphasising green and low-carbon development. And China's state-owned energy firms plan to boost natural gas production as a first step to reaching cleaner energy goals.
European lawmakers say there is no clarity on whether a post-Brexit trade agreement will be reached. A key member of the European Parliament tweeted that since no deal had been reached by Sunday, lawmakers will not be in a position to grant consent to an agreement this year. There is less than 2 weeks before Britain leaves the European Union, and both sides remain stuck over fishing rights and fair competition rules. Any deal must be approved by both parliaments. Richard Bestick reports.
At the end of the day, it comes down to a barrel of fish worth a couple of €100 million, a tiny fraction of the wider UK economy. In terms of the numbers of fish holding up agreement, the two sides aren't that far apart. They're relatively close on how long the transition period for fishing should be as well, whether it's 3 years as the UK demands or 6 to 8 years as the EU says it should be. The differences, though, are minuscule when put alongside the rest of the deal, 95% of which is agreed. The British side say the EU attitude is the deal breaker and that Brussels should respect the decision of the British people and their demand for independence. They've got just days now to sort it out, at which point the UK will depart the trade transition period and fall back on World Trade Organization rules. That will incur high tariffs and quotas. In a report published last week, the Parliamentary Brexit Committee said the country was not ready for that and there would be chaos at Britain's ports. But such is the Brexit symbolism of fisheries that the UK government says it's prepared to walk if it doesn't get its way. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
South Africa has officially entered the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The country's government has instituted new lockdown regulations in 3 areas: the Eastern Cape, the Garden Route district in the Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. This has had an almost immediate effect on the airline and tourism sectors. Angelo Coppola has more.
The airline and tourism sectors are still scrambling to make up lost ground from the first hard lockdown, and Ramaphosa's recent announcement about a second wave is concerning.
We're very nervous about the second wave. I'll be honest with you. We have seen now with the airlines having to close a little bit earlier than before the last press conference with the president, and we've seen a decrease in traffic, people cancelling flights, so we're very, very nervous. We're very nervous.
I think it will kill the little businesses, the small entrepreneurs, the SMMEs would probably go under, to be quite honest, because I don't think the tourism industry would withstand any more hard lockdown. It's been tough, it's been difficult. We hope that government will support us.
The local airlines are also a little anxious. Demand has gradually picked up, but the traditional summer holiday season hasn't taken off yet.
The second wave is obviously a massive concern to everybody across the country, and it will hit our industry quite hard. I think we are certainly seeing a softening of demand as a result of that. It means quite different things for people looking to take their summer holidays now.
It's definitely been an alarm bell, I think, from a customer perspective, quite understandably. People have been scared about visiting some of the high infection rate areas, like, for example, the Eastern Cape. But there's also some resilience amongst the travelling public.
Nature booking profile has changed entirely, so people seem to be booking later, which is quite difficult to manage your schedule. And I think it's people just worrying about perhaps impending lockdowns or access to the beach. But big demand very close to departure, which is unusual. Normally a December holiday is booked way in advance.
The new entrant into the domestic travel market is upbeat about the industry and the future.
Likewise, we're able to downscale if we need to, if demand isn't there. So flexibility is really the key. And for us, that's the name of the game. We need to be extremely flexible, extremely agile. And we also need to create flexibility for our customers who their plans are also changing.
I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN at Plettenberg Bay in South Africa.
Abundant rains soaked West Africa in recent months, causing catastrophic floods in some areas that raised concerns about the rising human and economic costs of extreme weather. But this year's downpours also created the thickest vegetation in years, a vital respite for Senegal's farmers and its 3 million strong herding community after 6 years of drought. CGTN's Beryl Oro reports.
This time of the year, Senegal experiences extremely dry seasons. But this time round, what is normally parched earth is flourishing. A lifeline for many of the herders in the northern region.
Thank God, this year we have grass. You see, the grass is still fresh at this time of the year. Last year, during the same period, grass was already dry and there was not much of it. Now the grass is still green. The last rain was 2 months ago. This year is much better than last year.
But behind the blessing lurks a danger. With so much vegetation, herders fear bushfires could easily wipe out the pasture. And water for animals will also become difficult to come by as the dry season progresses.
This year we remain worried because the grass is tall and a lot of herders, especially the large-scale ones, are afraid of bushfires.
Herders are not used to unexpected benefits in the Sahel's semi-arid prairies. The land now has nutritious plants the herders feared was becoming scarce.
You see now, because of the high rainfall, the good grazing fodder plant has appeared, which is great for grazing animals.
Even the coronavirus pandemic became less of a concern to the urgent pastoralist needs.
With the rain, we even forgot that COVID exists. We even forgot that the disease exists in the region because here we are in the silvopastoral area. The herder always thinks of feeding his animals before himself. So if nature smiles on them, they forget all their problems.
The rains have also boosted other sectors. Grain output is expected to jump over 30% this year, prompting Senegal to reverse its economic outlook for 2020 from contraction to growth.
God is making human beings face an existential crisis. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. Our fears are real. We have not experienced such heavy rainfall in more than 30 years. The previous year's rainy seasons lasted for 2 months, which is too short for planting. But God decides.
Dramatic climate swings year to year are normal for the Sahel region, making it hard to assess the impact of climate change on current conditions. But if dry seasons keep getting hotter, as projected by climate models, some herders doubt the sustainability of their way of life, given their struggle to get through recent dry seasons. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up after the break, works of art from those behind bars, Tunisia's unique approach to rehabilitation.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
A gallery in Tunisia's capital, Tunis, is hosting an exhibition showcasing artwork by prisoners from across the North African country. Around 800 male prisoners and 250 female prisoners have been able to create artworks while respecting social distancing. CGTN's Adnet Shawashe tells us more.
According to the General Directorate of Prisons and Re-Education, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to many challenges in Tunisian prisons. Inmates have not been able to meet in the clubs that have traditionally been the forum for the creation of artworks.
This art exhibition features some samples out of thousands of fantastic paintings and works created by prisoners during the COVID-19 pandemic. The prisoners have a lot of energy. Majority are between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. We're investing positively in this energy to get the best out of these people who are looking for support.
This prisoner has spent 7 years behind bars. He has worked hard for over 6 months to prepare for this exhibition. The inmate says art has changed his life.
I've learned handicrafts during my incarceration. Now I don't care about the time spent because I'm planning to start a mosaic business when I leave prison in 2 years. I'll never return to jail again. I'll be a good citizen who creates and sells artwork.
The project manager at the Ministry of Justice says art is a constructive activity through which people can express and manage emotions, unearth new talents while creating a vision and hope for a more positive future.
The successful art project shows how the justice system in Tunisia is responsible for a comprehensive rehabilitation and reintegration service for offenders. Our role is not to punish the incarcerated individuals who can have the tools to return to a normal life. Hopefully, the society will neither denigrate nor ignore former prisoners, but rather accept them because they are willing to change.
The managers of the prison arts program also shed light on the role of many trainers and art teachers, as well as volunteers who have been helping prisoners to embrace the therapeutic qualities of art. The Ministry of Justice is providing the human and financial assistance to the prison arts program. Experts assert that art could facilitate the rehabilitation of offenders and their successful integration into society. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Coming up in sports, Zimbabwe sports look to rebound from coronavirus disruption.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
The COVID-19 pandemic gives some federations in Zimbabwe the chance to clean house and plan for the future. However, football still remains in limbo with no clear roadmap on how and when the game will return. CGTN's Peninah Karibe brings us Zimbabwe's sporting highlights of 2020.
Like many sports, the rugby season was upended by COVID-19. But that downtime allowed for some necessary housekeeping.
We started off with the human resources side, where we re-looked at all our coaches, our national coaches, and we've done our interviews and selected and put new faces, in some cases, in place.
Zimbabwe's rugby boss was appointed to a continental board charged with growing the women's game.
What we've resolved to do as EXCO is to set up a committee that will make sure that the girl child is prioritized within Rugby Africa, and to make sure that they get everything they need in terms of training and in terms of game time.
Of the sports that did resume, cricket was the most notable, earning a famous victory on foreign turf.
For those guys to go there without having as much practice as Pakistan had, because if you remember, Pakistan had gone to England and they performed very well in England. For our guys to go there, and even if they lost the other 2 ODIs, for them to win the other 1 ODI, which came with 10 points, which then are used as part of the qualifying process for the next ICC World Cup, I think it was the greatest achievement from a Zimbabwean perspective.
Football is the most popular sport here and has endured mixed fortunes. After back-to-back qualifiers against defending champions Algeria, the Warriors are still in the hunt for a place at the next Africa Cup of Nations. However, not a single ball was kicked to the domestic league as boardroom and legal wrangles took center stage.
I think it has derailed the process of the return to football. So we now find ourselves where with the whole year, we are probably going to be the only Southern African country without any activity in the whole year. Our players are probably semi-professionals. So now for them to go for a whole year without playing football, especially the domestic players, I think it's going to have a huge impact. The impact is not going to be is not only going to be felt next year, it's going to be felt for the next 3 to 4 years.
The Football Association and government are still to agree on a format and date for the resumption of domestic football. Peninah Karibe, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in sport, 25-year-old Tanzanian boxer Hassan Mwakinyo had a 2020 to remember. In November, the African professional boxer stopped Argentinian boxer Jose Carlos Paz via 4th-round technical knockout to win the World Boxing Federation Super Welterweight Intercontinental title. His manager Kelvin Twisa tips Mwakinyo to be Tanzania's first international boxing star. CGTN's Daniel Keju has more.
Hassan Mwakinyo lives by the motto, train hard, fight easy. Despite 2020 being a hard year for global sports, this has been a good year for 25-year-old Tanzanian boxing star Hassan Mwakinyo. He kept training, and now his hard work, sweat and tears have paid off.
My dreams are to keep being world champion. That's all I pray for and what my mother prays for. I believe only God knows which path I should take to get there. But those are my dreams. I won't say it's this person who will get me there. It's all up to, but I will keep training hard, and I ask people to support me.
Mwakinyo has been adding to his growing list of wins in the last 2 years, including against Argentina's Sergio Eduardo Gonzalez and England's Sam Eggington, wins that have helped him climb the rankings. The boxer is now rated 42nd out of 2,077 boxers globally in the recently released rankings by BoxRec. Kevin Twisa from Jackson Group Sports has taken over managing the fighter. He says the future looks bright.
This has definitely been Mwakinyo's year. To be able to put 2 fights, given that the whole world shut down, even Tanzania at some point there was no sports happening. So we needed a win. We needed some gleam of hope beyond football, which has performed pretty well for Tanzania in the last couple of years. And as an individual, I think he totally stands out as one of the best that has performed in the year 2020.
The organizer of Mwakinyo's last event says Despite Tanzania having great athletes, sports management is still a challenge. He says more needs to be done to market the talent to sponsors so as athletes like Marquinhos can get well paid and change lives.
And the gap exists in lack of the success and failures of athletes in this part of the world. So what you find is you have great athletes that nobody knows about.
Although he grew up in humble beginnings, Marquinhos' star continues to grow in 2020. With each fight, his perceptions that Tanzanians won't spend money to come enjoy a high-value boxing event.
Marquinhos is expected to fight again in March of 2021. This will be for the defense of his World Boxing Federation Super Welterweight World title after his knockout win against Jose Carlos Paz of Argentina. Fans and supporters from across East Africa are eager to see what 20 is in store for Tanzania's young champion.